Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to the show. Today we're going to cover a little bit about the recording button in Buzz. Yes, if you're a new Buzz user, you've probably noticed that there's a play, a record, and a stop button right up there at the top of the screen. And you've probably hit that record button and probably expected Buzz to start recording audio from your microphone, recording it into a WAV file, a sound clip that you can play back later. And maybe this became a point of confusion for you when you realize the record button does not do what you're used to it doing in every other audio application out there. The record function inside of Buzz is kind of unique and pretty cool. It's actually meant to record the automation of the parameters on your effects and instruments, as well as recording MIDI information too. So let's jump right into it, and I will see you over there inside of Buzz. Okay, so here we are inside of Buzz once again. Let's just do the basic setup here. We want our audio meter, so that's the Jed Shiva meter. And again, this is just going to give us a visual aid so we can see how loud our tracks are playing back at. Okay, so now we'll just add in a cool VST synth patch here. Let's do the Triforce. Triforce by Tweakbench. It's a good old school chiptune kind of synthesizer you can get for free. Again, I'm just going shift, click, and drag to connect these. Double click to open it up. And we can see it makes some pretty cool sounds here. Okay, so in order to demonstrate the record button here, we need to pop over to the sequence editor. Just drag this out of the way really quick. Okay, and we want to make sure that we have a track for our Triforce here. And when you add in an instrument patch, it usually puts in a track for you. So let's just go ahead and make this loop a little bit longer. Just click down here, go Control E for end, and that sets the end point of our loop. Let's go up here and we'll press the 0 key, and that will add in our pattern. And again, you can tell over here on the right hand side, it will tell us how many patterns we have and which button we push to add the pattern into the sequence. So by default, we only have one pattern. The pattern is named 00, and you push the 0 key to add it into the sequence. Let's just go ahead and add a second track for this machine. So we'll right click, add track, and then select TB Triforce. So now we have two tracks here. We can actually double click this pattern and it will take us right over to the pattern view, which is the same thing as just clicking the button up here on the top to switch back and forth. So here in the pattern editor, let's just make the pattern a little bit longer. So we'll right click, pattern properties. Instead of 4 beats, let's just change that up to 16. And then you'll notice over here on the left hand side, it tells us how many ticks. So this goes all the way up to 64 ticks, and you'll notice if we go over here to our sequence editor, the pattern is also 64 ticks long. Okay, so back to the pattern editor. Let's go over here and create copy, and just name it the default name. We don't always have to do that through the menu. You can also just go Control, Shift, and Enter, and then that also creates another copy of the pattern. So the reason that I added a second track over here is that one machine can have multiple tracks to play multiple patterns at the same time. And while recording our automation with the record button, it's important to remember that tracks that are further to the left in the sequence editor will be recorded on first. So I'm going to demonstrate this in a minute here. If I add in a second pattern over here on the second track, then when we hit record, it will always record onto this further left pattern before it records onto this one. And this is useful if, say, on pattern 1, we wanted to have some notes playing, and we wanted to repeat those notes, but in a different part of a song, we want a different automation for that part. So we'd have one pattern for the automation and one pattern to keep playing the notes. And again, I'm going to demonstrate this in just a minute. So let's just add some notes over here onto our pattern 1. The page up to go back to the start. And then we can hit play and see how it sounds at the tempo. It doesn't really matter the notes too much right now. Okay, so now let's bounce back over here into the sequence view. Let's put our start at the start. What I like to do is I like to make sure that we have the looping mode enabled. So whatever we have defined as a loop here, we'll just keep here repeating over and over and over. And then I just like to hit the record button. And then I want to start going in and changing some of the parameters while it's recording. But in order to do this with the VST effects, we have another step that we need to go and do first. If we're using a Buzz native machine, we wouldn't have to worry about this step. We would just start recording and it would work. We need the VST driver to learn which parameters we're going to change. And we just do that right here in this Learn menu. And I like to click on Auto Learn. And then any one of these knobs or sliders that you change. So I'm just going to go with the pulse width and the oscillator level just for stuff that's easy to hear for demonstration's sake. And you'll notice when you open this back up, it will tell you right here, parameter 0 is the pulse width, parameter 1 is the square level, and you can just keep populating this list all the way up to 7 different parameters. Okay. So here comes the cool part. Let's go up here and let's hit record. And then as it's recording, I will tweak these knobs. And then once it's done recording, I will go back in and I'll show you what we had recorded. You notice how these sliders are moving on their own as it plays? That's because the information has now been recorded. So we can pop over in here into our pattern 0, and we'll see that it got all of this information recorded into these first 2 tracks. Then let's just go back over here and check in pattern number 1. And as we had predicted, it will leave our notes intact without recording any extra information onto this pattern. So we can reuse this later and the sequence and then still have the same modulation to it, or we can have different modulation. The 2 are separate now because we use this 2-track system. And this is one of my favorite techniques for making my weird glitch music or my weird noisy ambient kind of stuff, is if you just leave this looping and if you just keep recording more and more parameter changes, eventually you're going to end up with a gigantic mess of sound, and sometimes that's exactly what you want. I know that a lot of time that's exactly what I want, and I think that Jeskola Buzz is actually great for making this sort of glitch and noise kind of music like that. So anyway, after your automation is recorded, then we can go through and do all sorts of edits with it over here too. So we can just go through and just highlight and then delete sections of it if we don't like it. I like to just use the cut command, Control X, because if you hit delete, then it's going to change the timing here and it kind of gets weird. You know, we can just directly edit these values too. So let's say if the 5,000 is too much, then we can just step this down, make it 2. And just kind of keep doing that as much as we can. So we have the same idea of the parameter change, just we adjust it with our own values, sort of, if that makes sense. All this can be copied and pasted, so if you like this one little bleep or bloop it does here at the end, you can just Control-C, Control-V, and paste it. You can even paste the same automation onto a different track. It's not really picky about which parameter it's controlling, just so much as which values are here. A cool keyboard shortcut is we can highlight all of this and we can just go Shift plus, and you'll see that it increases these numbers and value, and the same thing with Shift minus. It will also decrease the values. And it's also kind of cool to note that if you do, cool to note, if you do this with a note value, check it out. We'll select this E4, Shift plus, and look at that, it actually changes the note value up or down by a semitone with that keyboard shortcut, which is absolutely invaluable if you're trying to transpose a piece of music. You just select all of the notes, all of them, and then you just go Shift minus 2 times, and now you just tuned the entire piece down a whole step. It's very powerful. Jump back over here to pattern 0 with our automation. Another cool thing that you can do here as far as keyboard shortcuts go is we can select a range, and then whatever value is at the start of this range and whatever value is at the end of this range, we can make an interpolation between the two just by clicking Control I. That's I for interpolation. And you'll see what that does. It gives us just a smooth gradient from one value down to the other. It's a very smooth fade out all the way from the 6,000 down to this 2,000. I'm saying 6,000 to 2,000 in layman's terms because it is hexadecimal values and it's a little bit more complicated than that. That's going to be another video on its own. And then the other cool shortcut we can use on our keyboard here is Control R for randomize. And check this out. It takes all of these highlighted ranges and just puts a random number there instead. Those keyboard shortcuts were kind of just a cool bonus freebie for this time. The point of this video is the recording and editing of the automation using the record button. Let's go ahead and select all of this. We can just shift and end, and then Control X to cut. Tab over. The tab key goes between tracks. Shift tab brings you back one. So we want to go all the way back up here to the start. A home key takes you to the top. Shift and the end key, Control X. There we go. That clears the pattern for us. And now I want to show you another way that we can go about recording these. Let's go over here to the edit menu, and instead of GUI, we're going to select the parameter list. And then that gives us all of our values that would be on the GUI just as a regular slider instead. And you'll notice that the parameters that we have MIDI learned show up here highlighted. So the pulse width and the square level, you can tell those are the ones that we have learned because they're the only ones highlighted here. It's not much of a big difference. We can still hit the record going and just change these values just like we did before. This time we're gonna really just mess with this pulse width a lot. It has like a lot more of a messy, erratic, glitch behavior. The more you just tamper with that while it's recording. Anyway, this parameter view is just another way to go about it if you don't like the GUI on your specific VST plugin. You know, maybe sometimes these knobs are not the kind of sensitivity that you're looking for, or they're just kind of hard to see and hard to control. So you have options for how exactly you want to go about the recording. Like I said at the start of the video, this record button is also meant for recording MIDI data, which is kind of what we've already been doing with these learned parameters from the VST plugins. But the other part of this is that we want to actually be able to record the notes from a real-life MIDI controller style keyboard. We don't want to just enter our note values on the PC keyboard. We want to actually play a keyboard like a musical instrument. We have a little bit of messy studio B-roll here. Here is my lovely Axiom 25 MIDI controller keyboard. You'll see that if we push some of its buttons, it likes to make buzz, make some noise. And I'm not a keyboardist. I obviously don't have amazing chops over here. Anyway, let's do away with this pattern 0 and let's hit our pattern 2 over here instead. This one should still be blank and pristine and clear, right? Okay. Let's put our pattern 1. Oops. Let's put our pattern 0 over here on this one. Okay, so now when we hit record and we start our loop, we should be able to just enter notes into our pattern from the MIDI keyboard. So let's try this out. Okay. Let's go check our pattern here. And you will see that we have our note name. We have our note velocity. And I know all this because it tells us all of this down here at the bottom bar, right? So we have our note name, note velocity, note delay. The note delay is there because your performance on the keyboard is not always going to line up to these spots on the grid, right? So the reason it's like that is because I hit the key a little bit after this number 5 tick, right? So it adds a delay right there to denote that it was later than this tick, but not as late as the tick number 6. So that's the note delay. You can change that to change the timing of your performance. And it will record these notes on multiple tracks. If you're recording multiple notes at the same time, you need somewhere for that polyphonic data to go to, and it goes automatically spread out over all these different tracks, right? Again, these MIDI controller keyboards are very useful if you are a Buzz user. All these different knobs and pads can be assigned to different things, and it just extends the functionality of Buzz for musicians and performers of any type, and I would say it's absolutely essential if you're doing more than just basic editing kind of things in Buzz. Of course, if you're already a keyboard player, you will absolutely get the most value out of doing it this way instead of just pecking away at the PC keyboard. Well, I think that about does it for this time, folks. I hope you found this video very useful, and I hope this helps you understand the strange but powerful interface of Jeskola Buzz just a little bit more today. You could be my very first supporter over on Patreon, a platform where you can offer your viewers cool perks for a low monthly donation. Like and subscribe, follow me for more recipes, and I'll catch you in the next video. Hope you all have fun out there.